Welcome back to the Gaming News Canada show. As always, I'm your host, Steve McAllister. We're recording this podcast on Monday, September 9th, just mere hours after the Alberta Lottery and Gaming Corporation let it be known that its Play Alberta brand has a new agreement to be the exclusive sports betting and online gaming partner of the NHL Western Conference champion Edmonton Oilers. The AGLC, however, isn't the only provincial lottery and gaming corporation making news these days. Last week, the British Columbia Lottery Corporation, more commonly known as BCLC, launched its new ProLine digital retail sportsbook. BCLC also announced a new online slots game by launching IGT's Money Mania to its online gaming platform and across 22 BCLC casinos. Today, however, we're going to focus on the BCLC's latest sportsbook product. And to provide his thoughts and layers on ProLine is the manager of retail sports for BCLC and a first-time guest on the Gaming News Canada show, Brett Hanson. Welcome, Brett.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me. Long-time listener. Happy to be here.
Great to have you on board, Brett, and appreciate your support of what we've done over the last 3.5 years with both the newsletter and now the podcast. I think where we'll start, Brett, is I think Matt Lee, I got a press release from Matt's inbox, I think a week ago today as we record this podcast. So you're launching a new product 7 days ago. It happens to coincide with the first week of the NFL season. You're going into championship week and the U.S. Open. Awful lot going on in the sports world right now. What's the past week been like for you?
Yeah, to say it'd be busy would be an understatement. It's been great though. In one way, it's been a long time coming for us to launch a new retail experience for our players. So it's been exciting, but it's been very busy. It was the key date for us was to make sure we had something back in the market before the NFL season kicked off, which we were able to do, of course. So we're very proud about that, and we're proud to kind of finally launch single event betting at retail in BC. So it's been, like I mentioned, a long time coming, and we're happy to be here. But yeah, it's been quite the week, to say the least, Steve.
And I'm sure, like anything, Brett, no matter how much planning you do and how much testing you do in advance, those last 72 hours to get to launch tend to be, it never fails. No matter how many best practices you do and how many things go right, that last 72 hours always feels to be a scramble.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, you could say that. I mean, especially we were coming off the long weekend here with the Monday being a holiday. We launched on the Tuesday. So in one way, it was kind of interesting. It was like, you had the calm before the storm. You had the one day of the everything kind of being quiet. And then it's just 8 a.m. Tuesday. It all starts. But, that's the nature of the business, right? There's lulls when it comes to sports betting and calendar and time of year. So we just happened to launch this when you couldn't be busier, really. So that's one way to look at it. But we always been planning to get this out before football. We wanted to get it out a little bit earlier than we did. Unfortunately, the way things went, we had to delay it a little bit. But we're out now, and that's the main important thing. And players can now bet, like we mentioned, at retail again, everywhere we sell lottery with our new product.
It's probably a bit early to ask you to give specifics on the first week in the NFL season, but any just high level stuff on how the products were reacted and how the marketplace has reacted to the new sportsbook.
Yeah, so I think I'm just sure we'll get into a little bit more about kind of what we've launched and what the differences are. But for us, we definitely saw very similar type of patterns, kind of old school patterns that we would see at retail from parlay based play and those types of things early on. We are a local. Obviously, we pride ourselves on being a local-based sports book. So, the local team, Seahawks, winning yesterday, not covering, but they still won the game, which was us. The BC Lions Friday night, they went on the road to Montreal and won outright as a 3-point dog. So, there were some good moments for the bettors this weekend for sure. And of course, you had some of the upsets yesterday with the Bengals winning outright, which obviously blew up some parlays for people with the Pats winning. So it's been good. I think we're happy with where it was. We know that it's going to be a little bit of a build back for us with the changes that we made and how you actually go about betting at retail. So with this product, so we couldn't be more pleased with how the first weekend went, and we know it's just going to go up from here.
Hey, Brett, I want to get into it with you and that retail experience in a second, but I would like to just talk about you for a few moments. And I think you're looking at your LinkedIn profile while getting ready for the podcast. I mean, so often in this industry, and I guess I'm an example of that too. We see people from various backgrounds, kind of pardon the bad pun, parlay their passion for sports and or sports betting into a career switch. And you've been with BCLC for 6 years now. You've been a product manager, a product owner, a product specialist. But is it a similar story for you where you just kind of, looked at a career maybe as an engineer or on the product side and found yourself attracted to getting into the sports industry?
No, it's funny. It's funny, Steve. My career has kind of taken it's almost like Jordan with a little time off and then come back. And I'm not comparing myself to Michael Jordan. I'm not the Michael Jordan of sports betting. Don't get me wrong. But I actually got started back in I don't want to say the wild west days, but I worked in the offshore industry, getting started back in 2005, and I went from customer service all the way up to being head props trader there. So my background is actually more on the trading side of the business and the actual betting side of the business. So when I was there, back in those days, there wasn't advanced models. You're doing everything by hand and trading that way. So we kind of learned, I learned really from just hands-on experience, right? Moving on air, moving on action, profiling players that way. So I'd say that was the best kind of on-the-job training you can ever get in a trading room like that. Because obviously nowadays, with the way the industry's changed, with modeling, advanced analytics, right? It was a much simpler time back in those days. So for me, my background was really in actual betting. So I've been in that kind of doing my own type of things those ways back since really the early 2000s. And I kind of, I was away for long periods of time from BC in order to do that, because obviously, when you're working offshore, you're in offshore areas. So I kind of was, missed my friends, missed my family. So moved back to BC, and then eventually an opportunity kind of opened up at BCLC to get back into the regulated online market. And really in Canada, at that time, even 6 years ago, there were only 5. If you wanted to work in actual online operations, there was only 5 that were legal in Canada, and those were all the lottery corporations. So it was a very limited opportunity, and it came up, and I jumped at it to get back in, as I'd been away for so long, and went back, worked on the Play Now side of the business for a while, and then kind of from there, just knowing where our industry's going and kind of my background, it made a lot of sense to move over and kind of look at the product side and how we can advance make our product a little bit better, and kind of meet those experiences that people are looking for. And then it kind of comes all full circle now, coming back into operations to manage the retail side. I would say you're right. A passion for sports early in my life. I've always had it, played hockey growing up, golf, and I was kind of in the golf industry thinking I was going to be a professional golfer. That didn't go my way. And instead I parlayed that into sports betting. So not exactly my parents' ideal career path for me, but here we are. And I think now they say that it all worked out in the end.
This is, we'll have to get you back on the show someday too, Brett, and get Phil Gray on, because Phil who's been a frequent guest on the podcast, has had a similar story, getting involved as a trader early on the ground floor. And I'm sure, like you, Phil's learned so much about the other sectors of the industry, whether it's compliance or fintech. And I think that's the one thing about working in any industries, and especially in a job like yours. You just can't be a one-trick pony, and you do have to be somewhat invested in other parts of the industry. And I'm sure that's the same with you at BCLC.
I think the one thing that's not talked about enough, Steve, is just how layered everything is, right? Like, it's not just you can offer this market to this player, right? There's so many things that go into those types of decisions, whether it's, it's like you mentioned, all the compliance and regulatory things that you go through. And then you talk about vendors and those types of things. So, I think it is a much, we always talk about, like, just do this, or this site's doing that. Why can't you do that? There's so many more different behind the scenes kind of things that go into it. And you do need to know how all those things are connected in order to, to do right by your players and by your operations. So I think that, the one good thing about being here is that now, I'm able to bring some of that experience that, we not always in the building, right? From some of those from the offshore side and how they do things and how they see things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that one way is right or one way is wrong. It's just a different way of approaching things, a different way of thinking. So, I'm proud of that experience. I think it's shaped the way that, I treat things now. And, I only really see positive in my experience, but, and how we're bringing that to the regulated market.
As someone who started their trading career back, almost 20 years ago now, do you think, again, this might be an unfair question or it might be too simple a question, Brett, but what's the biggest change in terms of bettors with sports betting and actually two parts, for the bettor and I think also for the trader?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at it. If you're a bettor, in my opinion, there's never been a better time to be a bettor, because the amount of information that you now have available to you is so far in a way better than what it was back 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago, you were all basically following the same little sites that were out there. Maybe some people had built their own models or whatnot, but there wasn't the information that you can get now it's incredible, right? You can basically pay for any type of model you want. You can subscribe to people that are going to give you a lot of that information. So really, you had a lot of the best people working for the trading side of the business to do that. Now they're on the flip side, right? So it's a very interesting how that's kind of switched, where now it's really who's got the best, data, who's got the best models that really is running the industry, which in a way it's not kind of the way you always love it in one way. It's not so much, you pick a side and you have an opinion on something, and bettors have an opinion on something, and you kind of post a number and you go at it, right? Now it's more along the lines of like, you're always kind of working from who has the advantage type of situation. So it's changed immensely. And I think it's changed in some ways it's for the better, some ways it's for the worse. But as far as being a bettor, I think there's never been a better time to be a bettor in terms of the amount of opportunities you have. I mean, think about it. Back in the day, we would have maybe a couple player props per game. You would maybe have, your main markets and spreads and totals. Now there's pretty much a derivative of every derivative out there, right? There's same game parlay plus. So it's changed so much, and but just because there's all those things out there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to be right for people. People need to make decisions on what's best for them and what markets they want to bet on. And, that's what, as an operator, we want to make sure we provide as many of those as possible for people to have fun, right? At the end of the day, sports betting is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to want to have fun with the bets you place, right? So that's what it's all about too. It's making sure there's fun things to bet on.
It's such a great point you make about the models and information. And again, not to diminish the concerns around match fixing, because I think there are sports or certain tiers of sports or certain athletes that could be susceptible to match fixing. But at the same time, to your point, there's so much information out there now. And, it's funny, talk to Andy McNeil, who's based in Edmonton, and it's kind of a hockey betting guru about this a couple of years ago when I was writing for the Toronto Star. And just checking Twitter now and looking at things like if the backup goalie is going to play in the next game, that can give a better an edge. And, you scroll Twitter on a Sunday, not just Twitter on a Sunday morning, but you can watch probably in Vancouver or Kamloops where you are, you could probably watch 4 pregame NFL shows on a Sunday morning that are going to provide you information about a receiver who might have a tight hammy, or a quarterback who doesn't throw, doesn't like to throw in crappy weather, and the models, the ability. We have the founders of WagerWire on the podcast this week, and talking about trading and selling bets. I mean, there are so many other ways for bettors to be engaged now and have success. As you point out, I think it does create a bigger challenge for people in your job, but at the same time, it provides a layer of fun, and that information makes it more enjoyable for bettors, and most likely gives them a better chance to win a little bit more often.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you made a good point there about, like, back in the day, you would be, one of the, and I'm just going to say back then, even now, how do you get information about certain teams? Well, you're following that team's local reporter, right? The beat reporter for the team. Well, now you have pretty much every fantasy site or other site out there aggregates all those reports anyway. So you can go to one place, find all that information, right? And it's updated constantly. Nowadays, anytime there's, and the NBA is a big one, right? With, injuries and holds and players not playing every night. So it's changed a lot in those ways where now it's all about who can get the information the fastest and who can update the quickest. So it's such a different, it's just a different world now. But that's how, our technology, when it comes to everything's expanding and growing, and there's no difference in our market. I mean, I'd say in sports betting, right? The technology changes over the past few years alone are humongous. The amount of just, acquisitions that happen in our industry are countless, right? So everything's changing, and it's changing at a rapid pace. And, you do your best to keep up with that as much as you can. But from a betting perspective, absolutely. I think, like I've mentioned before, I think it's the best time ever to be a bettor. There's so much information out there for you. It's just making sure that you understand what is valuable information, what's not valuable information, and applying it the way you can. But, we go from our old product, Sports Action, having about 5 or 6 markets a game, to our new product having, over 200 for an NFL game, at retail. That's going to be a lot more opportunities for bettors, right? So it's a good thing in that regard.
Let's talk about ProLine. And again, here in Ontario, and to be completely honest, was never a ProLine player. Wasn't not a big sports bettor, but I certainly remember walking into my local Milk or 11-store gas station, and the ProLine tickets being there and ticking off the boxes. What has been the evolution of retail sports betting, and where is it now with what you've done with ProLine?
Yeah, I think so. The big change, obviously, for retail in Canada came back in 2021 when the sports betting bill was passed to legalize single event betting, right? So that kind of changed the scope, because up until that time, everything at retail was, we all kind of had our own lottery based game, right? ProLine in Ontario had a 3-game minimum type of parlay type game, where ours was a 2-game minimum. You had, WCLC and LQ and Atlantic Canada all offering very kind of similar type games, but more lottery focused sports betting at retail. When the singles bill was passed, that obviously changed the landscape completely, where you had kind of the ability now to offer a more competitive offering at retail. For us in BC at that time, when that happened, we were going through kind of an update on our lottery system, and our lottery system, because of that, and Sports Action launched way back in 1991. It was such an old platform that it was built on. Unfortunately, we weren't really able to make the transition as quickly as other lottery jurisdictions were. I mean, most of the other lottery jurisdictions were able to sell singles at retail, fairly quickly. I believe by January, everyone was offering singles, whereas we were unable to back in 2022. So it's taken us a little bit longer to get there, and a lot of that had to do with just the massive project that we underwent here at BCLC in relation to our lottery gaming system. So just to give you some context, we actually replaced every piece of equipment in our field. It's a brand new lottery system, probably the most modern lottery system in the world. So because of that, we couldn't really move our sports betting program forward at retail until we did that. So that completed in May this past year, where we went live with all our new terminals and our new system. And then once that happened, we were then able to kind of add in our new retail platting, and from a branding platform, that's the name that we for ProLine, which has an established kind of retail brand across Canada. With obviously Ontario uses the brand, ALC in Atlantic Canada uses the brand at retail. So for us, we thought in terms of from a branding position, from being in a retail market, when other people from those jurisdictions come to our market and they see the same brand, we felt that it made some sense to look at that, to doing so, and that's kind of how we landed on ProLine at retail. But as far as the gaming system itself and what that is, the biggest change that we've made here is we no longer have physical selection slips. So in order to play at retail, you need to you create your bets via a digital app or a mobile site, or even on the desktop. You get a QR code, and then that's the QR code is what you scan at retail pay, get your paper ticket. So for us, we kind of ripped the Band-Aid off in a way by removing selection slips in full. It's about 4 million selection slips a year that we'll save in terms of from an environmental impact perspective. But we kind of just see we're kind of on a digital journey at BCLC, and we see this is the first product at BCLC to offer a digital purchase journey at retail. So it's it's kind of it's exciting in that regard, but it's going to take some time for people to kind of understand how those mechanics work. But we do feel like it's a better overall experience for players now that they don't need to have a pen and paper. They can do it whenever they want, build those QR codes and take them to any retailer in a province that sells lottery. You can buy ProLine.
And do you find, Brett, that again, if I take my own parents, for example, I have a mother who's incredibly tech savvy. She texts her grandchildren. She's on her iPad reading the news in the morning. And then I have a father who just, is very happy this summer because he learned how to use YouTube. and I just wonder, again, you think, and I remember interviewing someone or talking to someone in the early days of single event sports betting who's, dad still loved to walk down to the local convenience store on Saturday morning and make his soccer picks before the Premier Leagues began. And how much concern has there been about losing some of those customers, or does your research show that most people, including people of my vintage, are more tech and digital savvy today?
So it's a great question, Steve. I mean, for me, who's someone in charge of operations, it's obviously something I think about quite frequently as what that impact's going to look like. Now, when the decision was made to do this, we knew right away it was going to have a pretty big impact at first, right? Like when you make this change, you can't expect that everyone's just going to be on board with it necessarily, right? They're retail players, like you just mentioned. They're very routine-esque, right? Like they have their routines, they like to stick to them, and to be honest, I don't really think anyone really loves change, right? You see it when Instagram, anywhere, they make a change and it's the world lights up. Why would you do this? Why would you do something different? And then 3 months later, everyone's using it the same way they were before. So we knew when we made the change to take away selection slips that it was going to have an impact, right? So for us, we looked at it as, from a revenue perspective, we're going to take the hit early, knowing that it's going to take some time to build back up. And that's kind of what we did. For some context, the Netherlands, which has a very similar setup to the way we do here in BC in terms of how they sell at retail and online, it took them about 18 months to fully transition off of selection slips to QR codes and digital experience. So, we did it in one day. So we know it's going to take some time to build that back up, but that was a decision we made. And we do think that, as far as when you look at kind of the ongoing and where the industry is going and where kind of technology is going, we think eventually that, this was the right decision for us. And all that we can do is, like you mentioned, educate people as much as possible as why there's benefits to having it this way instead of the old way. And I think eventually people will come around on that. It's just, it'll take some time, and we completely understand some of that sentiment and how they're going to feel about it. But, overall, from a terms of use perspective, from just the easiness of use, once you get used to it, once you get used to using an app versus a paper slip, you'll realize that there is a lot of advantages to it.
And obviously, it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of the product you can offer and the kinds of bets, and ultimately, that's gonna be to the benefit of the bettor or sports fan, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the main reasons we did this. We wanted to be able to offer a more complete offering at retail, so now, before, like I mentioned, we had our lottery style game, and now you can go in there and bet on any future you pretty much want on any major league, props that we never were able to offer before. We have the U.S. election market up there for who's going to win the U.S. election. So it just really allows us to not only offer more now, but I look at this more of future focus, right? How can we bring this as we move forward? What does it mean for us? Well, it leads us to maybe look at different partnerships and where we can actually do with it. So it's more of a kind of where this is going to go in the future and where we want to go. I think ultimately, we're talking ProLine, but our Play Now platform has obviously been very successful. It's probably one of the better platforms out there, and we think it's a very competitive product out there than what the illegal sites offer. But I think down the line, eventually, we'd like to see a convergence between the retail and online world. And in order to do that, we had to modernize our retail product, which we've done. That's the first step, and then in the future, we'll see where that can lead us.
It's funny, you talk about change too, and we're recording the podcast on the day where the Professional Women's Hockey League announced their six team names. And of course, you go on Twitter this morning, and it's Twitter's or X's all abuzz with people mostly questioning some of the decisions around the names. And as someone who's been involved with newspaper redesigns and website redesigns in my former life as a journalist, I mean, majority of people are going to hate change right away, to your point, Brett. And I think it is going to take a while, and the education piece I think is going to be important for the new ProLine because it is different for people who are, like you said, have that routine of going to the store and getting the pencil and piece of paper out.
Yeah, and we don't, and by no means we want to take away the routine loving player either. We want them to just build ProLine into their new routine, right? They could still do the same thing. It's just where you actually build that slip is just a little bit different. That's kind of the only difference we see. You could still play it at your same retailers that you normally would. There's no change there, but now we've just expanded what you're actually able to do and how you do it. And again, I completely understand that it's not going to be a change that happens overnight, but we look at this more of, okay, if we want to move more into that, like we mentioned, that digital future where connecting more with kind of the younger demographics and how we do that, this is kind of how we start that in our entire organization. So we're happy to be the first. We know there'll be some growing pains along the way, but we get it. And I think as long as people understand that we made this change, not thinking that how to disrupt them, but how to make their lives actually work a little bit better and work more in the context of what they're doing. But before, you'd have to make sure you have the slips, and if you go into a store and there's no slips because they're sold out of them and they didn't get a restock in time, now you don't have to worry about any of that, right? You can build your slip at home, at work, whatever it may be, then go to your store on your way home like you normally would and just scan the QR code. So but like you mentioned, Steve, the change, it'll take some time, but we're understanding of that, and we know that, and we've taken that into account as we launch this new product.
Brett, in terms of the kind of some of the unique features of the new sportsbook, a couple of questions, or I guess the first one's probably an assumption. Like anything, people love to lean into their local sports, and I'm thinking that's true out with your customers in British Columbia. If it's anything involving the Lions or the Whitecaps or the Canucks, that people are going to be all over it. And you mentioned the Seahawks earlier. And then the question I did have for you, and again, this might be one of the dumb variety, but until I saw the press release last week, I hadn't heard of Toto. So I'm hoping you can maybe talk a little bit about what makes ProLine stand out, or what kind of unique features you're now able to offer, and also just tell our listeners what Toto stands for.
Yeah, of course. So why don't we start with Toto? So Toto it's very much just like our parimutuel pool of products. So it's based on the odds set three-way kind of market, and we have it for football, baseball, basketball, soccer, and hockey. Obviously, football is the main one that people love to bet on. So it's really just our pools. Our pool product, we've had it at retail since Sports Action launched. So it's very important. So we made sure that we were able to take that game and reproduce it in the new sportsbook, which we're able to do. So that's big. As far as kind of features of the new sportsbook, so obviously for us, being able to offer singles is now the biggest change. So we're now able to offer singles on everything that we offer in the sportsbook. The variety of sports and markets. So before with Sports Action, because of the way the lottery system was designed, we're actually only able to offer a limited amount of markets per week because of the menu sizes were only so big, right? So we're only able to offer 240 markets or events per week, Whereas now we can offer as many as we want, right? It's an endless amount. So we're now not limited in only able to offer, 5 or 6 college football games a week. We can now offer all of them. So it's a big advantage there. Same with the amount of leagues we're able to offer from a soccer perspective. Now, before we weren't really able to offer a lot of the, UEFA Nations League, those types of things, which now we can offer. So it just really diversifies the product for us and allows us to really, kind of expand the offering. The other thing we never had before this change was racing or fighting at retail because of the criminal code changes that came with the singles bill. So now we're able to offer MMA and boxing at those at retail, which provides our retail partners opportunities. Right, they can now advertise and be able to kind of bring people into those locations because they're going to be able to wager at those locations on the big fight cards and things like that. So that alone is big, right, Steve? Like being able to offer singles is just a huge change for us. Then you factor in just the amount of different things you're now able to bet on with our markets now, like I mentioned, over 200 markets for an NFL game and those types of things. And then really for us, the QR code, obviously the digital purchase experience is another major difference. So that's, as we get started, that's what we look at. And then of course, just within those games, what can we offer from there? So, we've added more props than we would have had before. We're looking in the future to add like a same game parlay as well. So that we don't have same game parlay at launch right now, but it's something we will be looking at, down the line, if we can offer that. As we talk about making fun bets, players love those types of bets, right? Because they're fun to make. So we want to make sure we can do something like that, but we kind of create some of those specials ourselves that people can wager on that are kind of popular. So it'll be a mix of what we can do and what we can't do there, but we're happy that we're able to launch, just kind of modernize the offering at first, and then kind of get it out there, get people familiar with it, and then continue to add on as we move forward.
Just a couple more questions. I should probably know this, but are you working with a vendor around the actual product, or is that something that's being done in-house, Brett?
So obviously, Intralot is the lottery system that we've moved to. All the equipment is Intralot based, the Intralot group. So from our back end technology in terms of integration with terminals and those types of things, we're using their sports, their Orion product from an integration standpoint.
Okay. We talk in this on this platform a lot about responsible gambling. It does seem to me that this digital experience is a better. Again, you talk about being able to do things more effectively. I'm thinking if you're filling out a piece of paper, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to be reading the fine print at the bottom of the sheet before you hand it to the clerk. With the online product, I would think there is a little bit more of an opportunity to get that RG messaging across and to emphasize it a little more loudly than you would have been for the previous with the previous format.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't have healthy players, you're not going to have a healthy product, right? I think that's kind of where it starts from. So, for us, we have, I think, kind of an industry leading game sense brand, right, to remind players around positive, healthy play with ProLine. So, we have messaging, logos, text on every generated QR code that you ever make in the platform. So it's integrated with a game sense there. And, we have the same type of links that are embedded within our site that are embedded on Play Now, that go to give the same type of player health information and support services that we offer there. So, we're trying to mirror that experience as close as we can. Obviously, having an account on Play Now, there's some different things you're able to do versus, an anonymous kind of non-account, which ProLine is. But at the same time, we continuously remind our players, that there's resources available for them if they're ever experiencing any harms related to sports betting. We have our Game Sense advisors, right? Those are dedicated player health specialists, who you're available via phone, live chat, which you can get to directly from the app. There's a phone number directly to the gambling support line to get that help. So, we encourage all of our players to learn more about the risks that there are when it comes to sports betting, by visiting GameSense. And we want to make sure that it's not necessarily that there's a link on a site or that there's there's text on a thing, right? It's got to be kind of embedded in the decisions you make, the product that you're building, and those types of things. So we keep player health top of mind all the time when it comes to our products and what we're trying to do. And we feel like we've done a good job integrating GameSense into the ProLine platform, but there's always going to be more that we can do, and we'll continue to look at other ways we can get involved, whether it's different types of partnerships or sponsorships, even on the player health side, to promote the responsible gaming, because we know that healthy players are really the key to sustainability long term, and we want to make sure we're doing everything to reduce the harm that sports betting and gambling can cause players.
Last question, and it seems to me that getting this product off the ground is the heavy lifting and the dirty work and the hard part and the long days and probably having too many pieces of pizza the last 3 months, Brett. What, and I guess to equate it to my own career, it reminds me of those days getting ready for an Olympics where at Yahoo, where I spent the last 8 years of my sports media career, you're building a product for the Olympics, and so for 3 weeks you're going like a bat out of hell, and you're making sure all the links work, and people are clicking on stuff where actual pages come up. And then once the game started, all you're doing is then you're just covering sports and following sports, and that's the fun part of what I did. What excites you now? I'm sure there's still some tweaking going on, and obviously some education, and not all the hard work's done, but it must feel like a bit like there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fun part now is just being able to offer, being able to see money coming in and actually see people betting on your platform, right? Like that's kind of where the payoff is. You put all the work in to get something, and you hope it's something people will like, and you build, you go through all the different modeling and all the different back and forth, and like you mentioned, the long nights and long days. I actually moved to Greece for a month to get to help get this thing going. So it's been a lot of sacrifice to get to where we are today, and I think moving forward, I think it's just sports betting is a lot about creativity, right? It's there's really endless amount of opportunities and what you can offer someone from a betting perspective. So it's going to be nice to get back in that mindset and be creative and find different ways that we can bring a different type of experience to our players here. And every market's different, every market's unique. Our players are different from players everywhere else, so we want to make sure that we cater to their needs and what they're looking for. And this is just the start of what we're planning to do. We see some opportunities here to bring a different type of experience to different areas. Right now at retail, there's no live betting in Canada. No one offers live betting at retail, but when we launch our product on our SST terminals or self-service terminals in our HN network, it will have live betting on those terminals. So that'll be a first for Canada, the lottery jurisdictions at least. So we're really excited about that and hoping we can get that out before the Super Bowl. So that's kind of, even though we're out, there's still things happening, and we're still going to hopefully move things forward. But I think that's what I'll be most excited about, right? Being able to bring kind of a different type of betting experience to those land-based locations. And that's what kind of we're focused on next.
Also a fun time for sports fans in BC right now, right? You got the Lions having a pretty good year and an opportunity to be in the Grey Cup in November. And of course, Canuck fans are pretty much downright giddy right now about the local hockey team out there.
It's been a long time for us to get excited about the Canucks. I think the excitement's warranted. I think they have a very good team. And, online last year, Steve, on Play Now, when we had the Canucks were making their run, right? It was record numbers for us. We had, the amount of peak players, never had more players, never had more handle on games. So people get excited. I mean, you get excited when there's winning, when everyone wants to win. So with the Canucks winning, hopefully we'll see that kind of translate both online and retail, and we'll have another good year. But it's exciting times. I'm bullish on the Canucks. I've always been, but if we can just maybe our goaltenders not both be hurt before the season starts would be nice. But we'll have as much as we possibly can offer for our local market here on the Canucks. And unlike the NFL is much more broad based for teams that people root for and betting handle. The Canucks and the Lions are where we see a lot of that money from a local perspective. Seahawks, of course, but it's just there's still the NFL is just such much more diverse fan bases, and you fall in love with teams for different reasons, and fantasy plays a lot into that too. So we see a lot of the local angle on our local teams, but outside of that, it's more of a broad-based dynamic here, which is fun for us because it allows us to do some different things when it comes to what we can offer our players.
Brett Hanson is the manager of retail sports for BCLC. Brent, as mentioned earlier, let's get you back on the podcast, and we'll get Phil Gray, and we'll do like a sport traders edition of the Gaming News Canada show. Maybe when we get after Christmas, when we can take a look at the Canucks and see where they are, and hopefully pushing for another long playoff run. But great having you on the show, Brett. Congratulations on launching ProLine, and I know it's never easy getting a product of that magnitude across the finish line. So congratulations to you and the people at BCLC around you who've worked on this project. And yeah, we look forward to kind of touching base and seeing where you are a few months down the road.
Absolutely, Steve. Thanks for having me on. We're excited to launch this, and I apologize for the loud shirt that I wore today. It was my best effort.
That's all right. There'll be the nominal $25 fine, Brett.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show. As always, you can find us at gamingnewscanada.ca, also on the Gaming News Canada YouTube channel and on the various podcast platforms. Again, thanks to Brett Hanson from BCLC for joining us today, and we will see everybody again very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Gaming News Canada show. Sign up for our newsletter at gamingnewscanada.ca. Follow Steve McAllister on LinkedIn. Message Steve if you're interested in being a sponsor or featured guest.